Well, joining us now to discuss this further is our international news reporter, Khayelihle Khumalo. Khayelihle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I got a sense that the president is really taking this, very on a light matter. I'm not sure if it's because of the question that was posed or the way in which it was posed. But before we talk about the implications of what was said by the U.S. ambassador, perhaps give us context. I mean, on the one hand, he is saying that, the U.S. respects South Africa's foreign policy, but on the other, he says he would bet his entire life that South Africa did indeed supply arms to Russia to aid in the Russia-Ukraine war. What else did he have to say? And also maybe give us the context in which he said these words.
Well, absolutely, Nat. It was a very unprecedented media briefing by Ambassador Brigety. So it was like an array of issues. But in a nutshell, it was the United States of America raising its concerns about what has been the position that South Africa has been talking about of the non-alignment, especially with the topical issue of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So they do say that, just in paper, South Africa talks about this neutrality, this non-alignment. But in actual fact, and really cited this particular example of the ship, the vessel that had docked in Cape Town, where they really made these very quite enormous allegations, where they said South Africa really sent these weapons to Russia. It's yet to be established in terms of the nature of these weapons, or if these weapons were sent. But also they spoke about also the naval exercises that were conducted by South Africa, Russia, and China. And all of this really coincided with the one-year anniversary of the Russia invasion of Ukraine. But also for the Americans, I mean, they do talk about the UN Charter that, it's well and good for South Africa to talk about international law, and that, we do subscribe to it in terms of their territorial integrity. So for them, they do insist that the stance that the Russians took in terms of the invasion of Ukraine is something that is really just a violation of the international law. So they really expected so much in terms of South Africa, especially given the links between South Africa and the US. I mean, the ambassador went as far as really just emphasizing these very important ties between Washington, D.C. and Pretoria, but also talking about this high-level delegation from South Africa that went to the US, how they engaged with so many high-level delegation from the US, from the National Security Advisor to the High Trade Representative as well. So many officials because of these implications in light of what has happened.
And I mean, that is concerning because, these statements by the US ambassador were made following that, a high-level delegation from South Africa going to the US, last month. And I mean, he goes on to say, in fact, that he believes that South Africa was not aligned on Russia's invasion, was non-aligned to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I mean, South Africa has always said that it is keeping quite, monitoring the situation, keeping its distance, and is remaining neutral. What are the implications of what was said today? We know, of course, the president tried to respond to, those questions from the DA, but also we know that the presidency has said that they've noted the remarks made by Ambassador Brigety and that they will respond, in due course.
It was a very comprehensive briefing on that. So first and foremost, the ambassador really went on the trade relations between the US and South Africa. In fact, going as far as mentioning PEPFAR, which is, of course, the HIV and AIDS program, a very bipartisan program in the US, supported by both the Democrats, the Republicans, and also just talking about how the US has been a very dependable partner to South Africa. But also he went as far as talking about AGOA, a preferential trade agreement, where some sub-Saharan African nations, including South Africa, are able to get their goods sold duty-free in the US, but also talking about the tourism market, where you have a very substantial number of the US citizens who are coming to South Africa. So essentially talking about these issues as well. But something that was also quite unprecedented was the ambassador's insistence that there is this hostility even from South Africa's governing party, the ANC, attributing it perhaps to the lack of the dialogue between the US government and the ANC, talking about his frustrations, how he has been trying to make overtures to the ANC to try and really just discuss, especially in light of the ANC's elective conference, where there was certain clauses that were adopted in as far as the international relations is concerned, where the ANC had a take around the NATO war. So where they were saying that that's the US expansionist approach alongside NATO is a cause for concern, especially because, I mean, that has been the issue that the Russians have been raising of the expansion of the NATO right next into their borders, eventually leading to the invasion of Ukraine. But also calling on South Africa, saying that what's going to work in this regard would be a dialogue perhaps to try and reset these relations, especially because we've seen so many high-profile US officials coming to South Africa, from their top diplomat, Antony Blinken, trying to speak to South Africa. They are also US Secretary of Finance, of Treasurer, also coming to South Africa, but also in a nutshell, trying to emphasize that the US is not trying to bully South Africa. They just want to emphasize that the position of neutrality should be respected.
Khayelihle, thank you so much for wrapping that so nicely for us. And I mean, also, of course, all eyes will be on South Africa, come August when that BRICS summit does take place. All right, that was our international news reporter, Khayelihle Khumalo, just unpacking those utterances that were made today by the US ambassador to South Africa. And of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that the claims that South Africa provided weapons and ammunition to Russia are being looked into.